When my great-great-grandfather was 12 years old, he left his hometown of Thurso, Scotland to find a new life in the United States. In 1848, he settled in Tampa. In 1948, I was born in Winter Haven. Whatever success I've achieved in life can be attributed to the lessons my parents and my other ancestors and my mentors taught me, and I'm so very grateful for all of them. Along the way, I've been blessed with a wonderful family. I have 4 grandchildren, 3 great daughters, Tricia, Sarah Jane, and Meredith, and a wonderful wife, Michelle.
And then there was the call I got from him that said, "Hey, Don, the Argus Foundation wants to honor me as the Lifetime Achievement Award. Did you run out of Sarasotans?" He wanted to know. Are you so desperate that you have to go to Manatee County to find a distinguished citizen?
One of the things about projects that we do together, and one of John's favorite sayings that he says on numerous occasions is, "It's better to be lucky than good." And that describes one project that John and I were actively involved in together, which was the original LECOM Medical College. And we had an afternoon meeting over at Manatee Memorial with the CEO of Manatee Memorial at the time. Just so happens the LECOM folks, who are from Erie, Pennsylvania, were touring the west coast of Florida trying to figure out where they wanted to place a branch campus. John and I just happened to be in the waiting room as they were coming out from meeting with the CEO, and introduced us, and they talked a little bit about looking on the west coast of Florida to put a medical college. John immediately pounced on that and said, "Hey, we ought to really take an attempt to try to get them here in Manatee County." That led us to really working hard in not only from the development side, but from John's contacts at the state in working on getting them approved through the state agencies and through developing the LECOM original campus building. I think that's probably one of our highlights that we have, and it just goes back to the part of John saying better to be lucky than good, because we would have never known they were here, nor would we have the opportunity to bring that great institution to our community.
John has been instrumental in assisting me and our real estate team, the board of directors, in building out our territory. So whether it is attended donation centers, which drives the business that we've got, or the campus that we are currently sitting in, John has not only been a developer, but he has been a counselor for me as we try to figure out where do we go next, how do we maximize our investment in real estate, and where can we go that is going to help this community the most.
What is tragic is that prior to 1999, unless you had a lot of financial resources, you couldn't put your child in a private school that specialized in their learning disability. And now, today, as a result of John's work and sacrifice, there are hundreds of thousands of kids who have benefited over the last 20 years, and their parents were able to, with the assistance of this program, to put their child in a school where their child could thrive. And Florida is better because of the John McKay Scholarship. Today we celebrate 20 years of that scholarship being in operation. And so we've inserted this moment in our graduation to give honor to whom honor is due.
Center Academy takes the time to figure out how the kids learn, so they don't have to be square pegs and round holes.
On behalf of parents throughout Center Academy, I want to thank you for the opportunity that you provided through wonderful legislation.
And for that, I'm truly grateful, but I'm also grateful for the fact that she's graduating with her head held high, and I honestly see a very bright future for her.
When you think about political capital, there was a lot of resistance to this. John persisted in spite of the resistance he received, And as a result of that, today there are over 1,400 schools in the state of Florida that serve kids with special needs. And so those are families that are grateful and eternally thankful for the work that John has done. And we celebrate him for that.
Bush versus Gore. The closest race in modern political history.
He was hardly sworn in as Senate President when we were faced with a huge presidential constitutional challenge in the Bush v. Gore case. There was a role for the Senate in that potentially. There was a lot of political pressure. There was allegations of vote rigging. We had equal protection issues here in the state of Florida that ultimately had to be adjudicated by the courts. And there was a lot of partisan pressure. And it was at that moment that I got an opportunity to see John's leadership style and his ability to remain calm under a great deal of pressure. It was a very surreal time. There were hundreds of thousands of feet of cable, satellite dishes all around the Capitol. You had folks like Wolf Blitzer and Brett Hume camped outside your office, broadcasting live on national TV. We were really the epicenter of a presidential election and a constitutional crisis that we hadn't seen in 100 years.
I don't think so. I think there's a bigger picture here, and I think that the state court overstepped its boundaries when it issued the ruling. There's an issue in front of the Supreme Court, as you will see if you read the brief that we are submitting.
And it took a leader like John to help the Florida Senate, at least, remain calm and not do anything knee-jerk under the pressures of a partisan political environment on a national stage. And I gave him a great deal of credit for how he handled that situation at the time. We didn't get very far past that when we were faced with 9/11. The news of which broke actually in Sarasota while we were in Tallahassee. Jeb Bush was our governor at the time. He was the younger brother of the President of the United States. And so there was a lot of concern that the Florida Capitol might be a target as well. And so there were national security issues that the President of the Senate had to deal with. Post 9/11, our economy froze. That created enormous economic challenges for the state. The Senate had to come in special session and cut, I believe, almost $1 billion out of our budget in order to keep it balanced as was required by the Constitution. And so as I look back over the course of the last 25 years of modern history, I think John McKay, as President of the Senate, had some of the most tumultuous tasks laid on his plate, and frankly, he handled them with grace under fire.
Any discussion, though, of John McKay would have to begin with the fact that really, if you ask most people, he was really a mere figurehead. His wife, Michelle, and I were the true brains behind the operation of the presidency of the Senate. And he sort of carried out those issues that we thought were most important for our community. But, I really shouldn't say that in public, and so we'll just kind of keep that, in the room here.
That John McKay is a man of high integrity. In effect, whatever John tells you, you can take it to the bank. You can believe it. I'll tell you a story that one of the House members told me one time. He asked me a question, do you know how John McKay became president of the Senate? And I said, not really. He said, well, John McKay is a man of such integrity. If he tells you he's going to build you a house, you can order your furniture. If John tells you he's going to burn your house down, call the fire department.
And man, we got in a lot of trouble for
John
that.
McKay can change your behavior and could change your behavior simply by a look. Whatever it was that you were saying, if there was just a particular look that you would get, you'd know to shut up because it was either inappropriate, well, hardly inappropriate. It was dumb. Whatever you were saying was dumb. And he could just glance at you. It was like a sort of, I don't know, he could just glance at you and just stop whatever behavior you were doing right there, sort of like a dog. And you would just tuck your tail and move on.
Yeah.
But then he would encourage you later on and tell you
Sure.
what a great job you're doing. And
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he was
was
just
your
a
biggest
fantastic human
defender,
being.
as big as well as your biggest critic.
yeah, you know, and they say in politics, if you want a friend, get a dog. And I would tell you that that is true, unless you can call John McKay your friend.
Yeah,
And in that case, you got one for life.
you got a good dog.
Yeah, you got a good dog, right?
Yeah.
John also liked to tell you very obvious things too. By the way, I mean he was the king of what was obvious to all of us. You know, Brecht, you should let me tell you how I run my business.
Right.
I've got this yellow pad, see,
Right.
Paper, and it's
It was
binder,
spiral bound.
and you take notes on it and write down the to-dos.
Right.
And when you're done with those to-dos, see what I do is I take a pen and I mark through it,
Right.
and that means it's done. You're like, oh, really? Holy smokes! Never thought about that before, John. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah.
That's great.
But but the spiral bound notebook was, you know, he would say, and this was not, he didn't say this just one time. If I heard this whole theme of the spiral bound notebook once, I at least heard it 100 times. And it was usually after I'd forgotten to do something. And it was like, well, did you do this yet? Well, no, not yet. And he would assume that I had forgotten or I hadn't made a note, and he would go into this is how I do it in my business, and it needs to be spiral. Why, Brecht? Why do you think it's spiral? He would ask. Well, I don't know, Mr. President. Why does it need to be spiral? He goes, well, the pages don't come off.
Don't rip off.
So you won't lose them. And yeah, but I still do use a spiral notebook to this day.
New College was founded in 1965. First students came in 1967. It was private. 8 years later, 1975, it was on the brink of collapse. It was brought under the state as part of the University of South Florida, which at that time had a small commuter campus here. And Senator McKay saw, back in 2000, saw clearly the distinctive missions of the various colleges in the regions and their potential strengths. He saw in particular with USF Sarasota Manatee and New College of Florida, he saw that they served different missions, both very valuable, one looking towards a future which was not defined, another being more responsive. So by separating them, he allowed both institutions to concentrate on what they did best.
But for John being in a position of significant leadership as the Senate president, the contribution he made to the Ringling Museum, it almost cannot be put into words, because but for John, it truly we would probably not see the Ringling doors open today. He had a passion and a motivation to save the Ringling Museum, the Cottazon, the galleries, these grounds that we're standing on, because he saw the significance of that to not only Southwest Florida, but to the entire state. And so John embarked on a mission to see what he could do to preserve the Ringling. And that involved eventually determining that the best place for the Ringling to have a new home would be in the state university system. In the state university system, it is protected not only from a budgetary perspective, but it is protected from a cultural perspective and a historical perspective. The university system is full of experts that know how to take care of museums and grounds and buildings of such significance. And so at the time, the partnership with Florida State University was just really a marriage made in heaven.
I couldn't be prouder of John for winning this award, because it is a business but community award, which I think he exemplifies that of anybody that I've ever met. Very few times in your business career do you meet people like John that you can look in the eye, you can hand him your checkbook and go out of town. That's the kind of partner, development partner that I've had over the years, and I couldn't be happier that he's getting this award tonight.